Welcome back to Trash Talk. I'm Masey DeMoss, and we're here to learn about compost. So what exactly is compost? Compost is where you take food scraps and yard waste, things like that, yard clippings, and let them decompose and turn into some beautiful soil enriching compost that you can use in your garden. So it's great for increasing your soil's microbiome by adding nutrients. It also helps to divert food waste from going to the landfill. A lot of wasted energy, nutrients, and creation of greenhouse gases. So composting is a great thing you can do at home to help improve the environment. So let's go talk to an expert and figure out about composting. Come on. We're here today with Julie, the Greensboro Community Garden Program Coordinator, and she's going to tell us a little bit about composting and how to start your own backyard compost bin.
Thanks, Masey. It is so easy to compost in your backyard, and it's so worthwhile to do. As Masey was saying, composting is just an awesome way to keep nutrients in your own yard. So rather than putting them in bags and putting them out on the curb for the city to haul away, you can keep them in your own yard and kind of reduce that travel time and reduce all the energy that we spend transporting materials, and feed your garden without really having to do any extra work. So we've got a couple of bin ideas for you here if you've never composted before. And this one is a particular model that basically just contains whatever materials you put in it. It's great because it can keep varmints out of it. Cats, dogs, skunks, possums, groundhogs, what else?
You name it.
Vermin who like to get into food scraps. This is a great way to keep them out and to compost at the same time. So this size of container is really probably best for when you just have small amounts of yard waste, but food scraps that you want to deal with, right?
Yes.
Kitchen food scraps.
Exactly.
So perfect way to deal with them.
Yeah, and about 25% of household waste is actually compostable in something like this. So about 25% of your total waste is food waste, and we can decrease that by putting it in something like this.
Right, and we always wonder what we can do to make a difference. And what do they say, 20 to 25% of food scraps end up in landfills right now?
Yeah.
And that is adding to all the greenhouse gases that are causing so many problems for us today.
Yeah.
So methane and CO2. If we can just get food scraps out of the landfills, that's going to help tremendously with climate change.
Yes.
So this is something everybody can do in their own backyard.
Exactly,
right?
yeah, it's awesome.
So even if you don't cook, you're going to eat food, right? And you're going to generate scraps. So this is the kind of container that can help you get started with that. Now there is a recipe for composting, and it's pretty simple.
Okay.
The idea is you take 2 parts brown material, and those are high in carbon, and 1 part nitrogen, or greens, 2-to-1 ratio carbon to nitrogen. Okay. So let's take a look maybe at some of our browns just to give you an example.
Okay.
Now this is some awesome stuff that we get from the city of Greensboro and use a lot here at the Keeley Park Garden, just as a mulch.
Yeah.
But it's great to use in your compost piles too. This is literally nothing but decomposed, partially decomposed leaf mulch that the city picks up every fall, right?
Yeah.
They've got mountains of it at the yard waste facility. So we keep a big old pile of it here at the garden, and this is what we use for our browns and our composting efforts. It's pretty broken down already, but you can still see little bits and pieces of stems and leaves. So it's not compost yet, right? So it's going to be a good brown to use. You can also use things like straw. This is wheat straw. You can actually buy it. It's not cheap, but you can find it. So hay can be used as long as it's aged, kind of moldy old hay versus the fresh green stuff. So 2 parts of the brown stuff to 1 part green stuff. And green stuff can be anything from weeds that you pull in your garden. It can be food scraps from your kitchen. It can be grass clippings. So those are greens, and that's pretty much what the name sounds like. They're green. They're moist. They got a lot of moisture in them, and they've got a lot of nitrogen in them.
Okay.
The reason why we want to mix them is we're looking for this ultimate ratio of about 25 parts, or the ratio of 25 carbon to 1 part nitrogen. So that's really sciencey, right?
Yeah.
I can't look at this and tell you exactly
what the percentage is.
What the C to N ratio is. There are a lot of people who've done research on that. But this does have some nitrogen in it still, but it's mostly carbon.
Okay.
grass clippings, weeds, this is a great time of year for weeds. We're doing really good with weeds here in the garden. And anytime you pull weeds or clip weeds, you can use that in your pile. So, pretty easy way to do it. We just do it by volume, not by weight. So I might take 2 buckets of brown stuff, 1 bucket of green stuff, and I'll just layer it, literally just layer it like a lasagna pile, right? Lasagna gardening or a lasagna compost pile. So 2 buckets of brown, then I'll follow that with 1 bucket of green. Okay. 2 buckets maybe of straw, layer green, and so on. And build it all the way up. If you got enough browns on hand at the time, you can build the whole thing up all at once. If you want to do it gradually, that's fine too. But always start with some browns. Then put your food scraps, your green material on top of it. And most important, if you are using food scraps, you definitely want to cover it up.
Yes.
So never leave the food scraps on top exposed.
So why is that?
Well, all manner of reasons, but insects mostly.
Yeah, so keep old critters out.
Right, so even though we've got a lid on this thing, we still want to cover the top layer with brown stuff, right? Okay. So always keep that covered up. So we've actually we put a couple of buckets of brown stuff in, and why don't we take a look at some green stuff that might come out of your kitchen? Have you got a bucket over there that you've got, or is that for industrial?
This is something that you could, yes, so this is more for industrial compost, but you could have a bucket like this at home. You could have a bucket like this at home to keep your food scraps in before you take it out to your compost pile. So this is like a countertop. Just collect your scraps and then take it on.
All right, now I'm looking in here. There's a hole.
Yeah.
Tell me
so you would want to put like a bag in it, and we do have compostable bags in here that say that they're fine for backyard composting. Okay. So you would put one of those bags in here.
I'm glad you explained that, because I was seeing all those
we'd have some some stuff leaking out.
All right. My favorite container at home for me, it works for my scale, under the sink scale, is just a coffee container, you know, once I get done with it. And once it's filled up, it's pretty ooky by that time. Yeah. So it's time to put it out. I don't want a real big container because it's going to get really gross. But just kind of a sampler, sort of a smorgasbord of
all kinds of
things that most of which came out of this garden.
Okay.
2 large okra, right? That happens to everybody.
Yeah.
The classic apple core.
Of course.
None of us eat apple cores,
maybe with some coffee grounds on there.
Right, a little sprinkling of coffee grounds. Coffee grounds for sure. Yeah. All of those go into my compost pile. Any kind of produce that might come from your garden or anything you buy that has a bad spot or you don't quite get to it in time can go in your compost pile. And all of these are considered greens because they have a lot of moisture, a lot of nitrogen.
Okay.
So
could you also freeze these?
Yes, you could, Masey. What a great idea. If you got room in your freezer, which I don't. But
if you did.
If you did, it's a great way to keep them from getting to the gross, slimy, icky stage.
Yeah, so if you had a bunch, you might.
Yeah, you could just put them in a bag or a container and keep them until you're ready to actually put them in your pile. So that's a good way to hold them for sure. So it's great if you can to chop them up a little bit. You don't have to dice them, finely like you're sauteing with them or anything. But since okra, for instance, is kind of woody and kind of tough, I'll probably just chop that in 2 just to expose the innards a little bit. It'll break down faster. So anything that's whole or entire, just give it a little chop before you throw it in there, and it'll break down that much faster. So, all right, so 2 parts brown, 1 part green. Layer cake or lasagna technique of building it up. You can do it all at once, or you can do it gradually over time. But the key thing is to cover those food scraps with brown materials.
Absolutely. Well, you made it sound so simple.
It is.
And we appreciate you.
Well, thank you.
Hey, thanks for joining us out here at Keeley Park. This is Trash Talk, and I'll see you next time. Bye.